Welcome back, it is UIX Part 9, and in Part 9 we're going to go over the slider interaction component. A slider is a value which you can slide backwards and forwards. If you think about a volume bar on YouTube or in Neos, here it's in the volume bars in the settings panel, or even in the camera control UI that I'm using to speak to you. Let me go ahead and head over to Smooth POV and then hit Render Private UI, and then you'll see here this slider right here in the middle, that's a slider. So we're going to go ahead and recreate one of those. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to turn off Private UI, turn to left here and get situated. So here over the left, we're going to be able to spawn out our default template for working with UIX. So I'll show you what that is in the inventory. That is inside public proper prime, UI stuff, UIX templates, and then that black rectangle on the right there, canvas template. With this spawned, we can get started. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in the world. Turn off Private UI again, and then grab the tool I need for this. You'll just need a developer tooltip for this. We just need a developer tooltip to make a slider. You might need logics or some other components to interact with its value or listen to its value, but we can just use a developer tooltip to make one. Let's go ahead and get started. We're going to go ahead and inspect the canvas template here by hitting secondary of our developer tooltip and then going to open inspect it in the context menu here. The first thing we need to do is specify an area for our slider to exist within. We obviously don't want the slider to take up the entirety of our canvas here. It would look quite silly to have a really big slider. So what we need to do here is create a smaller, narrow area. In complex, more sort of traditional UI elements, including the slider that's existing here on pixel scale, you'll have layout systems and stacked rect transforms that will shrink it down to the appropriate size. But here we're just going to go ahead and make one real roughly to show you how it works. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and create the area for it to live in. That's just going to be a squashed rectangle in the middle of our canvas template. To get that started, I'm going to go hit star on the canvas template, and that will make canvas template child. We can go ahead and rename that one to background, because this will be the background of our area. And then I'm going to go to attach component, UIX graphics image, and this is going to be the background of our slider. So if you go back up to canvas template, you'll see that the background of this slider is this gray rectangle. Going to make something similar to that. So I'm going to go ahead and set that to be a gray color, and then we need to kind of shrink it down a little bit so it's not taking up the full rectangle. To do that, because we're going to do a horizontal slider like the ones I've been showing you, we just need to specify the anchor min and anchor max to be values that constrain it to be drawn somewhere in the middle. I'm going to do this roughly, but feel free to play around at home. I'm going to set the anchor min on the Y to be 0.5 and the anchor max here to be 0.6, and that will give us a sort of 0.1 bar to play with in the middle. I know it's not directly in the center, it's actually raised up from the center, but it just prevents me from having to do maths whilst I'm doing this tutorial. With that done, that is the background for our slider. Now I need to create another child object underneath it. I'm going to be calling this one slider, so we'll hit star here, which creates a new child. We'll rename it from BG child to slider. This is where the slider is going to be. Now the slider has a component for it, which we'll go ahead and attach to this, but there are other parts of it that need to be created and added. So let's go ahead and attach the slider component to start with. We'll go to attach component, UIX, interaction, and then you'll see slider here. Unlike other interaction sources such as button and checkbox, you'll see that slider has a T after it, and that means that it's a generic type and that we can actually create a component or a type of slider based on the type that we want. So if you click slider here, you'll get a list of types of sliders that are available. These basically emulate the types of numbers which are available within Neos. Neos implements most of the number types that you'll find in many traditional programming languages. There's a long history of why there's different number types. You'll need to look into sort of binary computing to figure this all out. For the purpose of this tutorial, and for a lot of purposes during UI creation generally, you'll be using int or float pretty much exclusively. You might use some of the other ones if you really, really want to, but most of the time int and float will get you what you need. We'll do float today because it will show you how to handle floating point numbers within a slider, but feel free to try int out as well. So slider float, we'll click that, and that goes ahead and adds the component. Now this component doesn't do much by itself. It actually needs a handle to work. The handle is that dot in the middle of the slider. If we go back to canvas template briefly, it's that dot right there, that white dot. So we're going to go ahead and create one of those. To do that, we need to create another child object. I know there's lots of child objects going on here underneath the slider, and we'll rename this one to be handle. Capital H. Now this one needs to just be a UIX image. So attach component UIX graphics image, and to match the type of handle that we have on other sliders, we're going to go ahead and make that a circle. To do that, we're going to need a sprite provider and also a sprite for that. So for the sprite provider, I'm going to go to Attach Component, Assets, Sprite Provider. Then I'm going to need the sprite to put there. You can find those sprites in my public folder as well, so let me turn on Private UI. If you go back to UI stuff, you'll see inside Icons, Shapes, and then Circle Fill here. Feel free to try another shape. You can even do a picture of yourself or a friend. Doesn't really matter. It's up to you what your slider looks like. We're just going to do a circle for the tutorial though. So I'll drop this circle into the texture property of the sprite provider, and then I'll grab sprite provider and put it into the sprite property of the image. And now you'll see that we've got a nice white circle in the middle of our gray background here. We're not actually done now though, because we need to make this actually interact. You'll see right now if I click it or I grab it, nothing happens. To do that, we're going to go ahead and open up two inspectors such that we can configure things side by side. In this case, what we need is an inspector for slider and an inspector for handle. So I'm going to go ahead and grab slider, turn to the left a little bit and hit trigger, which will create a second inspector for the slider slot. And now we can copy and paste values between them to set things up. So you'll see down here on the slider components, a bit small, so I'm moving it a bit closer. There's handle anchor min drive and handle anchor max drive. These need to be set to the anchor min and anchor max of our handle slot. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and grab anchor min, drop it into handle anchor min, grab anchor max and drop it into handle anchor max. And then I'll part these inspectors. Sorry, it's a bit hard to maintain visibility whilst also providing you looks at the inspectors here. You'll see that our slider's handle has disappeared. That's okay. To rectify that, we just need to specify a property in offset min and offset max, which is our size. Offset min needs to be the negative version of our size, and offset max needs to be the positive version of our size. If you'd like to know more about offset min and offset max, check out part 1 where I talk about them. We haven't really interfaced with them a little bit. We haven't really interfaced with them at all, but now we're touching them a little bit. So I'll just show an example here. So in this case, what we're going to do is set offset min on both x and y to -30. I test these values out prior hand, so I know that 30 is good. And then offset max to be 30 in both x and y as well. I'll move this out of the way here again, and you'll see that we've now got a slider that is interactable and can be slid. If I get rid of this gizmo, we can slide it. You'll notice that it goes off the edge here, and that's because when you're doing a slider, it's very important to have some buffer zone, which is usually sort of half the size of the handle, to be buffered here. I didn't want to bother doing that in this tutorial because we haven't covered layouting in great detail. We will be soon, but that'll sort of help this sort of thing from not happening. Usually you'll have some sort of padding or buffer area that doesn't happen. So right now, just ignore it. But if you see when we grab the slider, it's changing the anchor min on the x for both min and max to a different value, and that's how it's controlling that. If we take a look at the slider here, you'll see that we also have the option to add color drives. Now, color drives are exactly the same as color drives in the button. They're a little bit easier to handle in buttons because they're set up kind of automatically for you. But we can use them to great effect here to also customize what the handle will look like. Like right now, the handle isn't signaling to me as a user of this UI that I can grab and drag it around. If I go ahead and hit add on the color drive, and then I grab tint, and I drop tint into the color drive property, you'll now see that when I mouse over it, we get that yellow color, which is specified in the highlight color property. And when I grab it, it goes to that full yellow color so that I can see it there. Additionally, if I disable it using the enabled property, you'll see it goes to this gray color and I can no longer grab it. So that is the visuals of the slider taken care of. And let's now take care of the data parts of it. So below all of the color data, you can see that there is a value, min, max, and an integer checkbox. The value is the current value of the slider. So you can see right now it's 0.5, which means we're roughly in the middle of the slider's volume. If I take it all the way to the right here, you'll see that it goes close to 1, not exactly 1, but close to 1. This is just floating point imprecision at us again, which will prevent it from going to 1, but that's basically 1. And if I go all the way to 0, you'll see that it's basically 0, floating point imprecision again not being our friend here. If I change the min and max here from 0 and 1 to, say, 0 and 5, you'll now see that things adjust. And if I drag it to the middle here, you'll see we're roughly about 2.5. And if we drag it to the end here, we're again at roughly 5. If you check the integers checkbox here, it will constrain the slider float, which I know it's a float, so it can have floating point numbers, to actual integer numbers. So if I drag this across, you'll see it's jumping across here. So in the middle here, you'll see it's 2. As it can't represent floating points, it can't represent the middle because we haven't given it an even number. So it has to jump to 3, 4, and then 5, and it can go all the way back again down to 0. If I jump this up to 6 from 5, you'll see that we can actually get in the middle here, which is 3. So good, that is the slider for you. I haven't covered other properties. There is the power property here. The power property is best explained in a description. Lots of people were commenting on my previous video about the progress bars, about what power meant. And I'll put links and credit to those explanations of what power does there. There were some on the Discord, some in YouTube comments, and some were DM'd me directly. So I want to just put a sort of list of everyone that helped out there for a definition of that in the video description. Beneath that is vibration threshold. That will cover how the haptics work. I don't actually have those turned on because they I save battery life on my controllers basically, so I can't help you with that one. Slide direction is the direction of the slider. If we change this to vertical here, you'll see that we actually go up and down the vertical area of the rectangle. That's a bit messed up because I haven't set up the middle rectangle here for that. But if you were to do that, you could do a vertical slider as well. You'll see those in various points throughout the UI as well. Those are common on YouTube players. Anchor offset just specifies the offset to apply. You'll see that we've currently got an offset of Y of 0.5, and if you look here, there's 0.5 on that Y. If I change that, would have a different value on the Y there. That's about it for sliders. I hope that's helpful. If you have any questions, do let me know in the video comments, and I'll get back to you. Join us next time for some more UIX. I'll see you next time.